The sun hung low over the dusty red streets of the alien marketplace, casting long shadows across the uneven ground. The market was crowded, but it was not busy in the usual sense. Alien vendors shouted over the wind, trying to sell their strange fruits and glowing crystals, yet most of the crowd moved slowly, dragging their tired legs, eyes hollow from hunger. A human traveler, tall and broad-shouldered, walked carefully through the narrow alleys. His eyes darted from stall to stall, noticing small details: a broken toy on the floor, a stack of moldy bread. The wary glances of children hiding behind crates. Then he saw her, a small, trembling figure huddled against the edge of a building. In her arms was a frail little girl, her large eyes wide and pleading. Beside them, a bent old alien woman struggled to stand, her frail arms shaking as she held onto a thin satchel. The grandmother's skin was pale and wrinkled, her white hair hanging in tangled strands. Her breathing was labored, and her clothes were torn and dirty. She looked at the human with desperation in her eyes, and in a voice so quiet that it almost vanished in the wind, she said, "Please, I am too old. Take my granddaughter, feed her. She is all I have left." The human froze. He had traveled to many planets, but he had never seen such pure desperation before. Around him, other aliens passed by, their faces indifferent, some sneering, some ignoring entirely. But the grandmother and the little girl, she was no older than 7, were a living cry for help. The girl looked at him with tears in her wide violet eyes. Her body was so thin, he could see the outline of her small ribs through her tattered tunic. She clutched a broken wooden toy tightly in her hands, shaking as if it were the only thing keeping her alive. Human. "Please, help," she whispered, barely able to speak. Her voice was soft but full of hope, and somehow it reached straight into his heart. Nearby, a pair of alien guards watched from a distance. They were tall and muscular, wearing metallic armor that reflected the red light of the planet's sun. Their eyes followed the grandmother and child, but they did not move. It was as if they were waiting for someone else to act. The human realized that helping these two could be dangerous. Alien laws were strict, and feeding or sheltering displaced children was forbidden. Yet, as he looked into the grandmother's eyes, he felt a pull in his chest, a voice inside telling him to do something, anything. The grandmother, sensing his hesitation, sank to her knees. She held out her satchel, which was nearly empty. "Take her. Feed her. I cannot. I am too weak." Her voice cracked, and a tear rolled down her wrinkled cheek. "I beg you. I have nothing left but her life." The human stepped closer, his boots crunching on the dusty ground. He could see the child trembling violently, both from cold and hunger. The smell of the marketplace stale food, alien spices and dust was overwhelming, but all he could focus on was the small girl. He could not turn away. The world around him seemed to blur, and for a moment, there was only the girl, the grandmother, and the heavy silence of the marketplace. Then, a sudden noise broke the quiet. A cart overturned somewhere behind the stalls, scattering its glowing fruits across the ground. Shouts rose in the distance. The human looked around, realizing that time was short. If he did not act, someone else might intervene. Someone who would not care about the girl's life. The grandmother looked at him with pleading eyes, holding out her small, trembling hands. "Please, she will die if you do not. Please." He took a deep breath and knelt down, putting his hand gently on the little girl's shoulder. She flinched but did not pull away. She looked up at him, eyes wide with hope, as if she already knew he would help her. The grandmother let out a soft, broken sob, clutching her chest as if a great weight had been lifted. Yet, even as he handed the girl some of the rations he carried, he knew the danger had only just begun. The guards were still watching, and others in the marketplace might see this act as a crime. Still, he could not turn away. His heart would not allow it. The little girl took the food slowly, tears streaming down her face. The grandmother whispered something under her breath, a prayer he could not understand, and pressed the girl closer to her chest. The human's mind raced. He knew that saving them would not be simple. They needed shelter, protection, and above all, someone willing to stand against the dangers of this harsh world. He looked at them both, and a strange determination filled him. He would protect them, no matter the cost. But as he glanced toward the shadowed alleys of the marketplace, he noticed a flicker of movement. Guards were closing in. Watching closely, their eyes sharp and unyielding. The human's stomach tightened. The danger was real, and it was coming faster than he had imagined. Would he get them to safety? Could he save the little girl and her grandmother before it was too late? The red sky above the marketplace seemed to darken, and a chill wind swept through the alleys, carrying the cries of those who had already been forgotten. The human gripped the girl's hand, knowing that this small act of compassion would change everything. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the story was only beginning. The human's hand lingered on the little girl's shoulder, feeling the tiny trembles of her body. She was so fragile, so small, yet her eyes held a quiet strength that pierced through the dust and chaos of the marketplace. Her name, he had learned from her grandmother, was Lyra, and the old woman, frail and trembling, was called Zana. They clung to each other as if the world outside might swallow them whole at any second. The human glanced around. The marketplace, though seemingly calm, was a trap. Merchants shouted at passing customers, but their eyes were calculating, always watching. Alien guards patrolled the streets, their heavy boots echoing ominously on the metal grates beneath. He could see their sharp, metallic eyes scanning for troublemakers, for anyone who might dare to break the law. Zana leaned closer, her voice a shaky whisper. "They will punish us if we stay. If you help her. You must understand. It is dangerous." The human swallowed hard. He had faced dangerous situations before: storms, wild creatures, collapsing bridges, but nothing like this. Helping two weak aliens, especially a child, in a place where even offering food to the hungry was a crime, could cost him everything. His mind raced through possibilities. Could he hide them in the crowded alleys? Could he sneak them out of the city? Or would they be caught before he even tried? He knelt slightly to meet Zana's eyes. "I don't care about the rules," he said firmly. "I cannot leave her to die." Tears welled up in Zana's eyes, and she clutched Lyra closer. "You don't know what you are risking. My granddaughter is small, yes, but there are those who would. Punish her. Punish you. Punish me." Her voice broke with fear. "You must choose quickly." The human knew she was right. Every second they lingered in the open increased the risk. Alien patrols might notice them at any moment. Hunger gnawed at Lyra's small body, and the child's weakness was growing. The human reached into his satchel and found what little rations he had left: small packets of nutrient bars and water. He handed them to Lyra. Her hands trembled as she took the food, her eyes never leaving his. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, and the human felt a wave of relief, but relief was short-lived. A sharp whistle echoed through the street, and the human stiffened. One of the guards was moving closer, his heavy frame blocking the sunlight, his gaze sharp and focused. The human stepped slightly in front of Lyra and Zana, trying to shield them. He noticed other market-goers scattering, sensing danger, and some even staring at him with suspicion. Zana whispered again, her voice urgent. "If you take her, you must move quickly. There is a warehouse nearby. Abandoned. It can hide us. But we cannot stay here. They will find us. They always find the weak." The human nodded, his mind already racing with plans. He could feel his pulse quicken, every instinct screaming at him to act. If he did not move now, the child might be taken, or worse. He extended a hand toward Lyra. She hesitated for a moment, then grasped it, her tiny fingers curling tightly around his. Zana's hand shook as she released her granddaughter, but she nodded, a silent prayer passing through her lips. Go, save her. As they began to move through the crowded streets, every step was calculated. The human kept low, guiding Lyra through narrow alleys, past crates of glowing fruits and steaming food vats. The market seemed to stretch endlessly, but every shadow, every flicker of movement made him tense. The guards were not far behind, their heavy boots a constant reminder of the danger they faced. Suddenly, a merchant's tray tipped over, spilling shiny metal trinkets across the ground. The clatter echoed like a gunshot in the narrow alley. Lyra froze, her eyes wide with fear. The human grabbed her hand and pulled her into a dark doorway. They pressed themselves against the wall, hearts racing, listening to the approaching footsteps. Zana's soft whisper floated through the air, barely audible. We will not survive if they see us together. You must trust your instincts. Trust yourself. The human felt the weight of the choice pressing down on him. He could turn back, leave them to safety, or he could continue, risking everything. His fingers tightened around Lyra's small hand. We are moving, he whispered. No one will take you. The shadows of the guards grew longer as they passed the alley. The human exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and dread. He knew this was only the beginning. The city was vast, the danger everywhere, and he could not yet see what awaited them beyond the next corner. But he had made his choice. And sometimes, one decision could change the course of many lives. The human led Lyra through narrow alleys, keeping close to the walls as the crowded marketplace began to fade behind them. Dust swirled in the wind, and the red sunlight cast long, shifting shadows across the buildings. Every sound, the clatter of a crate, the cry of a distant alien, the scrape of boots on metal, made him tense. He knew the guards were still searching, and even a single mistake could cost them their lives. Lyra clung tightly to his hand, her small body trembling. Her violet eyes darted from shadow to shadow, afraid to look around, afraid of what might be following them. The human tried to keep his voice calm, low, and steady. It's all right, Lyra. I've got you. You're safe now. For a little while at least. Her lips quivered, but she nodded, trusting him despite her fear. The human could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had never felt such urgency before. Not for himself, not for anyone, but for these two fragile aliens. Life and death depended on him alone. Behind them, a faint echo of footsteps reminded him that the danger was never far away. The guards would not give up. They would not stop until they found the child. The human knew he needed a place to hide and fast. His eyes searched the nearby structures, scanning for anything that could offer shelter. Then he spotted it. A warehouse, abandoned and half-collapsed, hidden behind a stack of crates. Its metal door hung loose on rusted hinges, and the windows were covered with grime and dust. It was far from perfect, but it could keep them hidden for the moment. He led Lyra and Zana inside, the floor groaning beneath their weight. The air smelled of rust and old machinery, but it was dry and still a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Zana sank to the floor, her frail body shaking. Thank you. Thank you, she whispered, pressing her hands to her chest. Lyra collapsed beside her, wrapping her arms around her grandmother's thin frame. The human knelt, watching them with a mixture of relief and concern. They were safe for now, but the real challenge was just beginning. He set down his pack and pulled out the remaining food and water he carried. Lyra's eyes widened as she looked at it, her small stomach already aching with hunger. She reached for it slowly, as if afraid it might vanish, and the human handed it to her gently. She ate carefully, savoring every bite, her body finally relaxing a little. Zana watched silently, her thin lips moving in silent prayer. The human could not understand her words, but the emotion behind them was clear hope, gratitude, and fear all mixed together. "You saved her," Zana whispered finally. "But this is only the beginning. They will come for her, and for you." The human nodded. He had expected danger, but hearing it from her lips made it real. "Then we stay hidden," he said firmly, "until we figure out our next move." He examined the warehouse more carefully. Old crates and broken machinery could be used as barricades. A few small holes in the walls allowed him to peek outside without being seen. He could hear the faint sounds of the city, distant shouts, the clanging of metal, the low hum of vehicles passing. Somewhere out there, the guards were searching, unaware that their target was now hidden just a few feet away. Hours passed in tense silence. Lyra slowly warmed up to him, her small fingers brushing against his hand as she asked simple questions. "Why are you helping us?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The human paused, thinking carefully. "Because no one should be left hungry. And no one should be alone," he said softly. She nodded, seeming to understand in a way that transcended words. Zana finally spoke again, her voice trembling but steady. "You are brave. More than most. If they knew what you did, it could cost you everything. But you chose to help anyway." The human's jaw tightened. He had no illusions about the risk. Alien authorities were ruthless, and a human helping a starving child could be seen as a crime of the highest order. But looking at Lyra, seeing the first hint of hope in her eyes, he knew he could not turn back. Then came the first sound that made his heart skip a beat. Footsteps. Heavy, metallic, methodical. Someone or several someones were approaching the warehouse. The human froze, listening carefully. Lyra clutched his arm, wide-eyed. Zana's breathing quickened, and her hands trembled on the floor. "Hide," he whispered urgently, pushing them behind a stack of crates. Shadows swallowed their small forms as the footsteps grew louder. The guards were close. Too close. The warehouse door creaked. A single silhouette appeared in the doorway, scanning the room. The human held his breath. His hand rested on a pipe, ready to strike if necessary. The girl pressed closer, fear gripping her small body. The guard moved slowly, unaware that the lives he sought were hidden just a few feet away. Time seemed to stretch into eternity. The human's mind raced with plans for escape, for survival, for protecting them both. And in that tense, silent moment, he realized one thing clearly: saving them would not be a simple act of kindness. It would be a war of wits, courage, and survival. But he was ready, because now, there was no turning back. The human watched Lyra and Zana huddle together behind the old crates, the dim light from the warehouse windows casting long shadows over their faces. Lyra's small body shook slightly, and the human could see how thin and fragile she truly was. He knelt beside her and offered a small smile, trying to ease her fear. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe here. For now." Her violet eyes, wide and frightened, flickered toward him. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Her tiny hand reached out slowly, brushing against his. The human felt a spark of connection, a fragile trust forming between them. Lyra had been through so much already, yet she dared to trust a stranger. That trust, he knew, was fragile and precious. Zana's voice trembled as she spoke. "You are different from others. Humans are not usually kind to aliens like us." She paused, wringing her thin hands together. "But you risk yourself for her. For us, why?" The human thought carefully before replying. "Because no child deserves to go hungry. Because no one should be left alone when they have no one. I couldn't walk away." Zana's eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. "Then you are more than brave. You are human." For a few moments, the three of them sat in quiet, broken only by the occasional creak of the old warehouse floor. Outside, the city's chaos continued. The distant shouts of merchants, the hum of vehicles, the occasional clatter of a dropped object, all reminded them that danger was never far. Yet inside, for the first time since the marketplace, they had a moment of peace. Lyra's voice was small but curious. "Will they come back for me?" she asked, looking up at the human. He hesitated. The truth was terrifying. The alien guards would not stop until they found her. But he could not show fear in front of her. "They might try," he admitted carefully. "But we will stay hidden. And I will not let them take you." The little girl's small hand gripped his arm tightly. "You promise?" "I promise," he said firmly. "No one will hurt you while I am here." Zana leaned back against a crate, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "We survived so far, only by luck. Or the kindness of strangers." She glanced at the human, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Maybe luck is finally on our side." The human nodded, but he could feel the weight of reality pressing down. They were far from safe. The guards were still searching, and the city offered few places to hide permanently. They needed a plan, a way to survive until they could leave the market district entirely. He scanned the warehouse. Broken crates, old machinery, and piles of discarded tools littered the space. It was enough to create small hiding spots and barriers. He could even set simple traps should anyone come too close. Every inch of the building became a potential shield, a way to keep the two aliens safe. "We'll have to be careful," he explained to Zana and Lyra. "We can't stay here too long, and we must move quietly. Every sound could alert someone." Outside, the grandmother nodded slowly. "We are too weak to run far, but if you guide us, if you protect us, perhaps we can survive." Her voice was faint but resolute. Lyra, emboldened by the human's presence, began to ask more questions. "What is your name? Where do you come from?" The human hesitated, realizing that they needed more than food and shelter. They needed trust, understanding, and hope. "I come from a planet far from here," he said gently. "I travel to help those who cannot help themselves. That is why I am here with you." The little girl's lips curved slightly, a rare smile that lit her face like a small spark. Zana let out a soft, relieved sigh, resting her head against the wall. For a brief moment, the danger of the outside world seemed distant, replaced by the fragile warmth of connection. But the human knew better. The guards were out there, searching. Time was short. Every plan they made had to be precise. Every step careful. Survival depended on their ability to trust each other completely, and so far, they had begun to. He looked at Lyra, at Zana, and felt a surge of determination. "We are a team now," he said softly. "No matter what comes, we face it together." The little girl's eyes sparkled with a flicker of hope. "Together?" she asked. "Together," he repeated firmly. Outside, the city continued to move, unaware of the small human-led group, hiding in the shadows of the warehouse. The human could only pray that their bond, their trust, would be strong enough to survive the dangers yet to come, because the real chase had not yet begun, and the city held far more threats than they could see. The human led Lyra and Zana carefully through the shadowed backstreets, each step calculated to avoid drawing attention. The city was a maze of towering buildings, narrow alleys, and forgotten tunnels. Dust and smoke hung in the air, mixing with the faint scent of strange alien spices and burning fuel. The trio moved like ghosts, weaving through shadows and slipping past dimly lit streets where merchants had long since closed their stalls. Every footstep echoed in the human's ears. He knew the guards were not far behind. He could almost hear their heavy boots, slow and deliberate, searching for the small child who had escaped their grasp. The city itself seemed alive with danger. Every alley, every doorway could hide a threat. "They are close," he whispered to Lyra, keeping his voice low but steady. The girl's small hand tightened around his, her knuckles white from fear and tension. Zana, still frail and exhausted, followed as best she could, leaning on a broken crate to steady herself when the ground shifted unevenly. The human's mind raced. They could not stay in one place for long. The marketplace was behind them, but the city was vast and unpredictable. Any corner might hide patrols, bounty hunters, or worse. He needed a plan, and fast. Suddenly, a sharp metallic clatter echoed from above a loose panel from a building roof. Lyra flinched, pressing herself closer to his side. Zana gasped, her frail body trembling. The human froze, listening. Footsteps approached from the opposite alley. They were heavy, methodical. Someone was tracking them. He led them down a narrower path, slipping through a crumbling archway into a side tunnel. The walls were lined with pipes and broken machinery, shadows dancing as faint light filtered through cracks. The sound of pursuit followed them, echoing and bouncing off the metal walls. He could feel Lyra's fear, and it fueled his resolve. He would not let them catch her. A sudden shout rang out behind them, sharp and commanding. The guards had spotted a trace of piece of clothing, a footprint, perhaps even a faint scent carried on the wind. The human quickened his pace, urging Lyra and Zana to follow. Keep moving, stay quiet, stay close. Zana struggled to keep up, her breath short and uneven. I cannot run much longer. She panted, her voice strained. The human glanced back, seeing her fatigue, and made a split-second decision. He grabbed a loose plank and wedged it across the tunnel entrance, creating a makeshift barrier. It would not hold long, but it could. Buy them precious seconds. Lyra's eyes widened as she watched him work, but she did not speak. She trusted him completely now, and he felt the weight of that trust like a physical force pressing against his chest. Go, he urged, pulling them further down the tunnel. The city lights dimmed, replaced by shadows and the faint glow of phosphorescent fungi clinging to the walls. The sound of pursuit grew fainter as the plank slowed the guards' progress. They emerged into another alley, less traveled and overgrown with weeds. The human knew this area well. It was a place few noticed, abandoned by the city's inhabitants long ago. He motioned for them to stay hidden behind broken crates and discarded machinery. Lyra crouched, pressing herself against the wall, eyes wide. Zana leaned on his arm for support, her breathing heavy but steady. We cannot stay here long, the human whispered. They will find another way. We need to keep moving. Lyra looked up at him, her small face pale but determined. Where are we going? She asked, her voice trembling. Somewhere safe. At least for tonight, he replied. I know a place. It is hidden. No one will find us there. The human could feel the tension rising in his chest. Every shadow, every sound, every distant shout reminded him that danger was never far away. He scanned the streets carefully, mapping a path in his mind that would keep them hidden and moving. Lyra's trust, Zana's hope, it all depended on his judgment now. One mistake could cost them everything. A faint sound behind them, a whisper of boots on metal, made him freeze. The guards were still following. The human gritted his teeth, feeling the pressure building. He could not let them see fear. He could not let them see hesitation. Stay close, he murmured, gripping Lyra's hand tightly. No matter what, we run together. The city stretched out before them, a labyrinth of danger and uncertainty. But the human had made a promise, and he would keep it, no matter the cost. Every step forward was a fight for survival, every shadow a test of courage. The chase had begun, and there was no turning back. The human led Lyra and Zana into a narrow, forgotten alley, its walls covered with chipped paint and flickering pipes. The sounds of the city faded slightly here, replaced by the occasional hum of distant machinery, and the wind whistling through broken windows. He paused for a moment, crouching behind a stack of crates, listening. Footsteps echoed faintly in the distance. The guards were still searching, relentless and unyielding. "We need a plan," he whispered, crouching beside Lyra. The little girl's eyes were wide and anxious, her small hand gripping his arm tightly. Zana, though exhausted, leaned against the crates, her breathing shallow but steady. "I cannot run much farther. I am too weak," she murmured. The human nodded, thinking quickly. Survival required more than speed, it required brains. He scanned the alley, noticing broken pipes, scattered debris, and loose metal sheets. With careful hands, he began to arrange obstacles, moving crates to block lines of sight, positioning debris to create noise traps. Every step was deliberate, every movement calculated to confuse and slow their pursuers. "Stay low," he instructed. "If they follow the same path, these traps will give us time." Lyra's eyes shone with awe as she watched him work. "You're clever," she whispered. The human gave her a small, reassuring smile, though his mind raced with strategies and contingencies. "Clever isn't enough," he murmured to himself. "We need luck too." Minutes passed, and the alley seemed empty for a fleeting moment. The human guided them forward, carefully avoiding the unstable sections of the ground. They slipped past broken machinery, shadows hiding their movements. Lyra's small legs stumbled occasionally, but the human caught her each time. Zana leaned on him, her frail frame trembling, yet she did not protest. She trusted him completely, and that trust was both a weight and a source of strength. Suddenly, the distant clatter of boots grew louder. The guards had discovered another path and were closing in. The human froze, calculating quickly. He noticed a small passage between two walls, just large enough for Lyra to slip through. "Quickly," he whispered, guiding the girl into the narrow opening. Zana followed, though slowly, supported by his strong arm. The narrow passage led to a small courtyard, abandoned and overgrown with weeds. The human peered over the edge, spotting the guards below, their armored forms scanning the alleys. One of them paused, sniffing the air, and the human felt a shiver of fear. They had the advantage of numbers and authority, yet he had something they did not, his determination and quick thinking. He led them to an old rusted ventilation shaft, hidden behind a pile of crates. It was a tight fit, but it offered temporary safety. "This will hold them off for a little while," he said, crouched inside. Lyra clung to him, whispering, "Will they find us?" "Not if we are careful," he reassured her. "We move quietly, we think ahead, we survive." Hours passed as they waited, hidden in the shadows. The human scavenged scraps of food from his pack, rationing them carefully between Lyra and Zana. He taught them how to use the shadows, how to move silently, how to watch for danger. Each lesson was small, but essential for survival. By nightfall, the alley was quieter. The city's patrols had moved on for now. The human led Lyra and Zana to a safer hiding spot, a small abandoned storage room, its door reinforced by a loose metal sheet. Inside, they could rest, though sleep was uneasy, punctuated by dreams of the guards finding them. Zana whispered, her voice trembling but full of gratitude, "You saved us. More than anyone could have. But how do you know how to do all this?" The human looked at her, thoughtful. "I have learned to survive in dangerous places, but it is not just survival. It is caring. You protect the weak, you think ahead, and you act when it matters most. That is what keeps people alive." Lyra nestled close to her grandmother, her eyes finally showing the first glimmer of hope. "I think you are like a hero," she whispered softly. The human smiled faintly, though the weight of reality pressed on him. Heroes were not invincible. They made mistakes, they suffered, and they risked everything. But in this moment, he felt the truth of what he had done. He had saved lives, and that mattered more than fear. Outside, the city continued its restless hum, unaware of the small trio hidden in the shadows. but the human knew the danger was far from over. The guards would not give up easily, and the night was only beginning. Every decision, every move, every act of ingenuity could mean the difference between life and death. He looked at Lyra and Zana, seeing their fragile hope and silent trust. And in that moment, he made a promise not just to protect them, but to fight for them, to outthink anyone who dared threaten them. Because in a universe that often seemed cold and cruel, he would show them what humanity could truly be. Night had fully fallen over the alien city. Shadows stretched across broken streets and abandoned buildings, and the faint glow of distant lights painted the alleys in eerie shades of red and gold. The human crouched beside Lyra and Zana in the cramped storage room, listening intently. Every footstep, every whisper of wind, could mean the guards were closing in. "They're coming," he whispered, his eyes scanning the broken doorway. Lyra pressed herself closer to him, trembling. Zana's thin hand clutched her granddaughter's, her body shaking with fear and anticipation. The human took a deep breath. "We've made it this far, but we have to be smart. We stay calm. We stay together, and we fight if we must." A sudden noise outside, the scrape of metal on stone, made all three freeze. The guards had found the storage room. Their heavy boots and armored forms moved with precision, surrounding the building. The human peered through a crack in the door, counting 5 guards, their weapons ready. They would not show mercy. He turned to Lyra and Zana. "Listen carefully. Stay behind me. Follow my lead. No one touches you, understood?" Both nodded silently, fear and determination etched into their small faces. The human moved first, carefully pushing a crate to create a small barricade. As the guards approached, he grabbed a discarded pipe from the corner and held it ready. Lyra's wide eyes followed every movement, her small hands clutching Zana's. The guards entered cautiously, scanning for any sign of movement. The human waited, his muscles tense, his mind calculating each possibility. When one guard stepped too close, he swung the pipe with precision, knocking the armored alien to the ground. A chain reaction followed, clanging metal, shouts, and the sudden chaos of the confined space. Lyra screamed once, clutching her grandmother, but the human reassured her, keeping them close to his side. "Stay calm. We're almost through this." Zana, despite her age and frailty, found a spark of courage. She grabbed a small metal rod and struck a guard who tried to approach Lyra. The little action bought them precious seconds. The human glanced at her, impressed. "You are braver than you know," he murmured, using the chaos to their advantage. The human led them out a side exit into a narrow alley, shadows providing cover. The guards shouted behind them, but the trio was already moving. Faster than expected. They ran through forgotten streets, over broken walkways, and under flickering neon lights. Every step was careful, yet quick, as the human used his knowledge of the city's secret paths to stay ahead. Finally, they reached a small hidden courtyard, surrounded by crumbling walls and overgrown vines. The human paused, listening. The guards were no longer in immediate pursuit. For the first time that night, Lyra allowed herself to breathe freely. Zana sank to the ground, tears streaming down her face, clutching her granddaughter close. We made it," Zana whispered, her voice trembling with relief. The human crouched beside them, catching his own breath. "Yes, for now," he said, "but it's not over yet. We need to find a safe place, far from here, where no one can find us." Lyra looked up at him, her violet eyes shining in the faint moonlight. "You saved us. Even when it was dangerous. Even when it could have hurt you." She hugged his arm tightly. I will never forget you." The human smiled faintly, feeling the weight of exhaustion and relief. "You don't have to remember me. Just live, stay safe, and take care of each other." Zana's trembling hand reached out to him, pressing against his arm. "You are more than a stranger. You are our protector, our savior." For a long moment, they sat in silence, listening to the distant hum of the city. Danger was still out there, but the immediate threat had passed. The human felt a rare warmth, pride, compassion, and a deep sense of humanity. He had risked everything to save 2 lives, and in return, he had gained something far greater: trust and hope of those who had none left. Finally he stood, helping Zana and Lyra to their feet. "We move now," he said. "There's a place I know. Hidden, far from this city. You will be safe there, I promise." Lyra's small hand slipped into his, and Zana leaned on his arm. Together, they stepped into the shadows of the night, moving silently and quickly, disappearing from the eyes of those who would hunt them. As they vanished into the dark alleys, the human looked back once. The city sprawled behind them, chaotic and unforgiving. But ahead, in the unknown night, there was hope. Hope for Lyra and Zana. Hope for those who believed in kindness in a cruel universe. Hope that one act of courage could change everything. And in that moment, the human knew he had not only saved 2 lives, but he had also shown the galaxy what humanity could truly be. For in a world that often forgot compassion, one human's courage and heart had made all the difference.